Hey, Jay. Yuki barely served a purpose. Yuki was supposed to be one of the strongest. I wish we got to see more of Yuki.
Yuki Tsukumo is an overrated character. Jujutsu Kaisen is filled with, in my opinion, one of the most diverse and interesting character lineups in the Jump magazine right now, ranging from a psychotic overpowered sensei to a less psychotic based gambler. Many of these characters are honestly great, and obviously while that is to say that all of them are great, most of them aren't getting the attention of a certain special grade sorcerer, and that sorcerer is Yuki Tsukumo. There is a very weird and noticeable polarity in the community when it comes to Yuki. Some think she was underdeveloped and misused, while others in the community think she had all the development she needed and served her purpose perfectly in the overall plot of the story. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, at first I was on the side that her character was a complete waste, but after giving it much more thought and a little bit more insight, I'm now leaning more towards the middle, and I can explain what I mean by that. In chapter 50 of the manga, as Todo watches Yuji land consecutive black flashes on Hanami, Todo then says that he is getting flashbacks of that time. That time his boredom was flipped upside down. This is of course the introduction of Yuki Tsukumo. Now, while this introduction is quite brief, what we do get from it is that Yuki is quite strong, as the story is kind of implying so. When we're officially introduced to Yuki, and I mean like actually in the story, not via flashback, we find out that she is one of the 3 special grade sorcerers at that point in time, drastically raising our interest level for the special grade sorcerer. Now fast forward to chapter 204. At this point in the story, the Yuki hype is absolutely insane, because the thing with Gege's writing is usually we just let him cook, and we get moments like Gojo versus Toji, Megami's Domain, you get the point. But I get to chapter 208 and I watch as Yuki get packed up by Kenjaku, and I can't help but think, well, is that it? Because keep this in mind, between chapter 76 and chapter 204, Yuki is barely relevant in the story at all.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Now, after all this time, with over 150 chapters since she's been introduced, after finally seeing her curse technique, which is, might I add, pretty cool, that's it. And besides some of the people on like Reddit and Twitter saying that her character is a complete waste, I can understand why some might not completely be on board with this. At this point in the story, the hype surrounding Yuki just for her to be seemingly discarded and tossed to the side can leave a bad aftertaste in people's mouths. But we as fans can tend to forget that we kind of did this to ourselves, because all of the hype that we created around Yuki was just that, hype. Gege himself never once gave any inclination that Yuki was making it to the endgame. In fact, because of the understanding of how strong we know special grade sorcerers to be, we just assumed that Yuki was relatively close to the likes of those like Satoru Gojo. Assumed that since we had yet to see her curse technique, it had to be something extremely special. Not to say that she isn't close to Gojo by any means, or to say that her curse technique isn't powerful, because obviously it is. What's important to note is that while yes, I would have liked for her to be more relevant in the story, Yuki's character itself wasn't a waste. The build-up for her was. Personally, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with the killing off a character to showcase the main attack strength. We've seen it done with Rengoku, we've seen it done with Kite, we've seen it done with Neji. Well, actually, I don't know why they killed Neji off exactly, but you get the point. The problem comes in when you introduce a very strong character really early in the narrative just for them to not be relevant for a large portion of it. And that in itself isn't the problem. We've also seen that happen with exceedingly good results. The problem is when they are given their time to shine, their payoff isn't as good as we thought it would be. Instead of giving us a good showcase of why Yuki is justified to just go overseas, we get Yuki getting packed up by Kenjaku in relatively quick fashion. I think this is one of the many reasons why the 2011 Madhouse version of Hunter x Hunter decided not to introduce Kite into the Chimera Ant arc, despite him being introduced in the first chapter of the manga. Because I feel as though if we had gotten Kite in the first episode of Hunter x Hunter, we probably wouldn't have felt that the payoff would have been good enough. But if you put him at the beginning of the command arc, he can narratively have the same result, and as fans we don't care about the payout because he dies in the same arc that he's introduced in. And look, I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's important to understand that Gege doesn't really care about killing off his characters, nor does he care about the hype that any given character might have. Regardless of that, even though I'm not the fondest of how Yuki's character turned out, because I really did want to love her character, I'm still not upset about it. Because yes, while she did have a really cool curse technique and a really cool design, that doesn't take away from the fact that the role that she did play was necessary. So yeah, even though Yuki wasn't the most relevant, even though she was a special grade sorcerer, or she wasn't able to fully showcase her strength, it doesn't mean that she was poorly written or she was a bad character at all. It just means that she was overhyped. Now, if you're someone that doesn't like Yuki's character, or even someone that does like Yuki's character, I'm not going to stand on the soapbox and try to tell you otherwise. What I am simply trying to say is there's a distinction between overrated and poorly written. With that, let me know in the comments if you think Yuki is an overrated character or not. And also, where do you put Yuki on your special grade sorcerer ranking? Personally, for me, I think it could be a toss-up between her and Toji in 3rd place, with Gojo and Yuta being 1st and 2nd, but that's just off the top of my head. Anyways, that's about it. Peace.